Welcome to the Collective Genius Podcast, the show for real estate investors who are looking to scale.
Welcome back into the Collective Genius Podcast, the podcast for real estate investors that want to grow and scale their businesses. I am so excited today to introduce my next guest. This week's guest is a longtime friend, a great man, husband, father, business owner, podcaster. I'm going to let him say all the rest of the things that he does, but one of my favorite people, someone that lives the CG culture, that is CG culture, that is my man in South Florida, Mr. Alex Pardo. How are you, my friend?
Leon, after having spent some time with you the last 48 or 72 hours, I'm a lot better, man. You and I were just joking how we don't get to see each other that often. So, man, your words, honestly, I'm just extremely grateful for our relationship. Just for the CG culture, the community, Jason, everybody that's a part of it. So thank you, brother, for the opportunity to come on here and just kind of share my story.
Yeah, it's long overdue. I've been wanting to have this conversation with you. You're a longtime podcaster. I've known you for a long time, and I've always said this to you. For the listeners out there, sometimes you meet someone that you can just tell has the biggest heart, always has a smile on his face. If you ever need a shot of positivity, Alex is your guy. And you just have always lived that way. And I'm thankful to have someone like you, because I know that anytime I need to pick me up, I can count on you for that.
1000%, brother. And look, and that's not to say that I don't experience setbacks and challenges, and I haven't had, God knows, my fair share of failures, because I have. But I do believe that mindset is more than half the battle. In fact, I would guess it's probably 90% plus of anything we decide to do, whether it's being a better father, a better husband, a better real estate investor, entrepreneur. I think if you don't have the right mindset, man, you can have all the tools and resources in the world, but if you don't have this right, then it's not sustainable. You're going to fail. And so we can't control many things, Leon. I think you'd agree with me there. The older I've gotten, I've come to realize there's very few things I can control. My mindset, how I react to something, the way I communicate. Outside of that, man, I don't have a whole lot of control over the exterior, right? So I just try to focus on the internal. And I have found that more times than not, when I'm right inside, then my external world starts to change.
Wise words. You can tell that there's some sage in there. There's some age. You can see in the face. You're starting to get a little older, a little wiser, as all of us hopefully do as we age. There's many reasons I wanted to have you on the show, Alex, but I think one of the biggest reasons, and I want you to let everyone know what you're doing now, and we'll get through your journey, because this is my favorite part of this pod is I get to have conversations with friends and share their stories. A lot of that I already know, but I learn new things as well. So definitely want to get into your journey. But one of the many reasons that I wanted to have you on is, as part of the real estate investing journey, I often get from our current members and also people that I talk to that are potentially coming into our community is, hey, I'm really loving single family, wholesaling, flipping, hoteling, novating, holding. I'm enjoying that, but I want to elevate into new asset classes. And specifically, you hear apartments and you hear self-storage, and you're one of those investors that has, made that transition from single family, 20 years ago, starting in that, to now really focusing on self-storage. So why don't you do this? Let's give a proper introduction to what it is that you do today, and then we'll go backwards from there on how you got to where you are today.
For sure. And I'd love to do that, because CG is a big part of that story. And I don't believe that I would be where I'm at today without all my years in CG, the relationships I built, the relationships I still have and cultivate, because to me, that is the power of community. Yes, you get great content, but it's about the relationships. I think you and I are a perfect example of that, having met through CG and then just built a friendship over the last several years. But yeah, so I am in the self-storage space. I no longer wholesale single family homes, which was my main focus and bread and butter for 14 years. About 5 years ago, Leon, as you know, I looked at my goals and my vision, and I asked myself, is the vehicle that I'm in with my business, is it aligned with my goals and my vision? And for me, the answer was no. And so I've always been a ready, fire, aim type of guy. You know, whenever I decide and commit to something, I trust that God is going to point me in the right direction, and he'll give me the people that I need to connect with, the who's, not the how. So I wasn't too worried about how was I going to get into a completely different asset class. I just knew that it was aligned with my goals and vision. And so, yeah, right around the time of COVID, I had already mentally decided I was going to unwind my wholesaling operation, and we can talk about that. But right around the time of COVID, it was a blessing in disguise. And I said, you want to know what? This is the perfect opportunity to unwind this beast of a business, at least for me, that I had created that just no longer served me. And later that year, I said, let me commit to self-storage. And so, yeah, today I own and operate mom and pop storage facilities in smaller markets across the country. And then, as you know, where my heart is really to coach people and impact and help them. And so, you know, have a coaching program teaching people how to get involved in this asset class. Because, Leon, what I've come to realize and learn over my last, you know, handful of years in self-storage is that it's not as big of a bridge to walk through and to overcome to transition into this asset class. I believed, incorrectly by the way, that I needed to learn all these new skills, and I needed just it was a completely different asset class. And so I just thought, hey, I'm starting from ground zero. What I now know with certainty is that all the skill sets that single family real estate investors have acquired and have sharpened throughout the years, all of those translate over into self-storage. So that's probably a longer answer than you were looking for, but yeah, 100% of my focus is on buying value add mom and pop storage facilities in small markets in the country.
You made the decision, you said, use the word unwind several times, which is not common for most that make this type of transition. Most add an asset class and continue to do the things that make them money. Maybe not serve them, as you used that word earlier, serve your for the goals that you wanted to obtain. You made a decision to totally unwind.
That's right.
Not just the single family side, but also your single family flip empire show as well, which you had done hundreds and hundreds of episodes. So you completely changed that as well, because your podcast, Storage Wins, is you made that transition as well. This is not, you know, most people that make these types of jumps like this, you know, from my experience, have struggled to make that. I'm sure you had your own, you know, struggles as you made that change. Give us some, and you know, and how you got to this point where now you feel like you're winning.
Yeah, Leon, it's a great question. There's a lot to kind of reflect and digest there. But first, for me, it starts with my faith. Because I have faith in my relationship with God, I think it emboldens me, if that's the right word to use. It gives me courage and strength to make decisions even when I don't really have a dialed in plan. Like I know where my North Star is. I know where I want to go. And in the middle, there's a lot of fog. It's very fuzzy. But because of my faith, I feel like I had the courage to just take that leap. Now, don't get me wrong. I don't just wake up out of bed and say, hey, I'm going to rip this Band-Aid off and I'm going to shut down this. But no, there's a lot of, I feel like I have wise counsel. I feel like I have people I can lean on that are further along in the journey of life and business than me that I can lean on. And then most importantly, my wife, the support system I have, prayer is a big aspect of it. So I think the reason I've been able to make these big pivots, is the word everybody uses these days, is because I think, number one, it starts with my faith and relationship with God. Number two, I think I'm just very clear about what I want, and I'm equally as clear about what I don't want. And you're 100% right. There's a lot of people that add, and for me, that hasn't worked out the best. It's two different businesses, even though I did say the marketing is very similar, the acquisitions is very similar. At the time, I thought it was a completely different business. And quite honestly, Leon, like, I built the wholesaling business the wrong way. I made a lot of mistakes along the way. I think I grew too fast, and all of a sudden my margin shrank. I had a bigger team than I had for the vision of the business, because I saw others scaling and growing, and I just thought that, hey, that was the path. But I didn't filter it through what I wanted. And I just got to a point after 14 years and right around the time COVID came that I was like, man, I'm a little burnt out with this. I don't know that I want to keep chasing single family deals and just building a transactional business. In fact, Leon, I don't know if you're going to remember this or not, because do you mind if I share my experience at CG? This was September of 2019. I'll never forget it.
Absolutely.
you were leading and facilitating the room I was in. And by the way, and I've shared this with Frank and some of the others that were there when I was a part of CG. Like, I always wanted to be in your room because of the way your insight, the way you facilitated the room and connected people, the conversations that we had. I always gained so much from being a part of your room. And I remember having a presentation that I was the one to kick off day one. And I had this entire presentation panned out. And last minute I said, you know what? I'm not going to go in this direction. I'm going to share what's on my heart. And I remember I was really nervous to share with a group of 30, 40 of some of the top real estate investors in the country that, man, I don't know that I want to keep doing this. I feel burnt out. I feel like I'm like on this big hamster wheel. The problem is there was a hamster wheel that I created and built. And I feel like I had made all these mistakes. And I didn't know that I had the energy to burn it down and build it back up because of the model I was in. I think wholesaling is an amazing business to generate a bunch of cash. As you know, the mistake I made prior to joining CG is that I wasn't taking that active earned income and putting it into cash flow producing assets. And so I shared, and I remember after that, 30-minute presentation where I basically shared, hey, I don't know if this business aligns with what I want. Here's what I want. I'm just not sure how to get there. I had so much support from the people in that room, from you, from others in the CG community that said, man, follow your heart. Like, you'll figure it out either way. And I didn't know it was storage at that time. But it's interesting, man, when you put yourself out there and you just openly share, it's my belief God has a way of closing doors that you're not supposed to walk through and opening the ones you are supposed to walk through. So probably a lot to unpack there, but I'll pause in case you have any follow-up questions.
No, I definitely have some follow-up, of course. I think this is the secret sauce to our community. We want to create and foster rooms where people like yourself can be honest and open and not necessarily ridiculed. That doesn't mean someone didn't say in that room at that particular time, saying, what are you, crazy?
Yep.
I'm sure there were people that were thinking that. But at the same time, we allowed you. And for those that are considering a community, first of all, get in a community. Seek wise counsel, as Alex said. Even if it is an hour, seek wise counsel
100%.
for what it is that you do. If it happens to be real estate investing, I'll tell you why this room is a difference maker for not only you as a human being, but also, you come in from the business side, but you get both. And I know that the support was there and the opportunity for you to just say, look, guys, here's where I'm at. I don't know if that happens in a lot of rooms. You have some people that just the ego won't allow them to really say what's on their mind.
Right.
Because they're supposed to be these alpha male and alpha females that are crushing, that word of crushing deals, especially in the single family space. I'm crushing. I'm the best I've ever been. When inside, you may not be aligned with that North Star that you were talking about earlier.
Yeah.
That is so crucial to our rooms. And I appreciate that members like yourself share that and are open about saying, look, I'm struggling with this. And there's every quarter, there's someone that has this type of, a burnout kind of presentation to which you are either going to internalize it or you have an opportunity to seek wise counsel with people that are probably going through the same things as you. To transition from, that room and how you transition, if someone listening to this, I want you to give as much as you possibly can and maybe that you can remember.
Yeah.
Obviously, your faith is a big part of this, but at some point you realize that it wasn't single family, the vehicle. The vehicle was self-storage. How did you make that transition?
Yeah, it's a great question, Leon. I happen to have been fortunate that I've coached a lot of real estate investors going back to 2013. It's my core belief that we all have gifts and talents given to us by God, and we have to figure out what those are and lean into them. Not as the parable talks about in the Bible, you don't want to bury your gifts and talents. You want to figure out how to multiply them. And I figured out early on, like, I'm moved and driven to want to have an impact on people's lives, even if it's something small, just a ripple effect. And I was coaching somebody that owned a storage facility, and I got an insight, as you know, when you coach somebody or you're in a top level community like CG, you get an inside look into people's businesses, the good, the bad, and the ugly. And I had an inside look into that asset class, and he had a lot of what I was striving for. He had more time, he had more freedom, he had cash flow. It was an actual business, but that came with the benefits of real estate. And I said, I always incorrectly, by the way, assumed that once I graduated from single family, what's the next step? Multifamily for a lot of people. Multifamily just felt a little oversaturated to me at the time. I didn't want to deal with tenants and toilets because I had started building a small rental portfolio in Cleveland, by the way, partnered with another CG member, and that was going well. But I did the math and I realized I was going to need to have a pretty large single family portfolio to have the kind of cash flow I was looking for. And I saw an inside look into a self-storage business, and I said, you want to know what? That is the asset class in the vehicle that I believe lines up with what I'm looking for. And so I just started researching it. And then I came across a lot of statistics that said self-storage is the most recession-resistant asset class, how it's growing because Americans just consume things. And when the economy isn't doing too well, people downsize from 4 and 5 bedroom houses to condos and small houses, and they don't get rid of the stuff, they store it. And so I can go on, but I just started researching it. And the more I researched it, the more I said, this is where I'm going to plant my flag, right? And by the way, it wasn't the only vehicle I considered. I looked at other things, but I definitely wanted to stay within real estate. That's what I knew. That's what I believe in is one of the great businesses in order to not just generate cash flow, but to build wealth. And I had so many resources within the space. So yeah, by late December, I had a coach of mine, Leon, that gave me, I thought, some of the best advice I've gotten June 2020. So whatever, 3-4 months after COVID kind of shook the world, I was ready to go figure out the next business. And he told me, hey, Alex, take some time off, reflect, pray, figure out what's the next move. You'll know it in your heart. And by December, I said, hey, it's self-storage. So yeah, December 2020 is when I committed myself to that asset class. And so, almost 5 years later, I'm really happy I did.
Curious on what else you were considering. Obviously, apartments was something that you didn't want, more tenants, more toilets. What else besides self-storage were you considering?
Yeah, I looked at e-commerce. E-commerce was a thing that was exploding, but that was a whole new business to figure out. I didn't have the resources. I didn't want to start from scratch. And I knew I liked real estate. I didn't get burned out with real estate. I got burned out with the way that I built the wholesaling business. I didn't go about it the right way. I think of a really good friend of mine, in fact, who called me when he was considering CG. And I remember we had a really big conversation about it. Bobby Suarez, probably.
Bring him up today.
Dude, probably, I don't know about Florida, he might be, but definitely South Florida's biggest home buyer, and he's exploded. And he's doing, in fact, I had dinner with him and his wife, I don't know, a month and a half, 2 months ago. Amazing guy, built the business the right way. I remember joined CG, plugged in, took advantage of the people, the resources in terms of collaborating, and he went about building it the right way. I didn't. I made a lot of missteps along the way. And I have to own and blame. I blame myself for that. But it was also a blessing in disguise because I realized I didn't have the energy that Bobby has had over these last 2 years to build it the way it's supposed to be built. I think he's built something that has real enterprise value. But we all have our paths. There's a lot of, I think one of the mistakes, Leon, people make is that they look at others and they only get the facade of what's going, they don't know what's behind the scenes, and they make important life and business decisions based on what they see on social media or somebody presenting from the front of the room. And they make these huge decisions, but they don't filter it through what they want, their lifestyle design and goals and all that kind of stuff. And I think that's really important that people step back before making a big decision and really filter it and analyze, is that what you want, or is that what you think you want because of what you see others doing?
What was the biggest challenge as you made that switch? Obviously, you and I have had this conversation. Self-storage, especially if you're below institutional size self-storage, it's mostly mom and pop business owners, and a lot of them are boomers that are retiring or done with that particular asset, or kids don't want it, those type of things. So you're dealing with a motivated seller generally with the smaller, the smaller facilities that also seem to have land that you can build more because that person didn't really want to go do that the last few years of their ownership. So we know it was very similar from a marketing standpoint, but I'm sure you had some challenges. I want to talk about the wins as well, but I want to start with the challenges.
Yeah, no, and there's been a few. In fact, probably my biggest challenge was, so if I ask my 8-year-old daughter, hey, what's one of the most important things with real estate? My 8-year-old can tell me location, location, location. Now, maybe that's because of what her father does, but I think that's a location. Most people know that, hey, you got to buy in the right market, in the right location. It's just super important. Well, I violated that rule on the biggest asset I had purchased at the time. My very first storage facility, I bought a 43,000 square foot facility in Jackson, Mississippi. And if you know anything about Jackson, Mississippi, it's a pretty depressed market. High crime, demographics aren't very strong. In fact, I think the average medium household income in Jackson's like 30 grand, around there. Fortunately for me, Leon, while I violated that rule, I bought it right. I bought it at the right price. And so I since sold that facility last year and was fortunate to have done very well. However, I got into storage because I didn't want the headaches, and I didn't want the management intensive issues that sometimes building a single family portfolio can have. And yet I dealt with a lot of break-ins. I dealt with the fence getting cut every other week and people breaking in, and, bad debt and delinquencies, things like that. Well, what I've come to realize is storage is no different than single family from the perspective of you need to make sure you're buying in the right markets. And while that may seem obvious, I'm sure there's going to be some pretty sharp investors listening to this saying, well, duh, Alex, like obviously who doesn't know that? You have to sometimes the returns look amazing on paper, but you have to ask yourself, what's the reality of owning that asset? And for me, it was just more management intensive than I was looking for. Now, if you juxtapose that to, I have a facility in Amelia Island, which is a very lucrative, not lucrative. What's the word I'm looking for? Like, it's a vacation destination. I think the average medium household income there is 140,000. So there, I haven't had one break-in. I've owned that facility for 3 years, and it's just super easy to run and manage and operate. So those are some of the challenges I've dealt with storage. Just dealing with break-ins and dealing with, the gate not working. But the cool thing about storage, Leon, is that it's a pretty boring business. There's not a lot going on. There's not a lot of traffic at these businesses. Sometimes I ask people like that own or rent storage, how often do they go to the facility? At most once a month, so the pros have definitely outweighed the few cons I've dealt with. And so I would say that's probably been one of the biggest challenges I've dealt with, is just managing remotely, by the way, because all of our facilities are unmanned, meaning I don't have any employees. I have a small boots on the ground who's part-time. I have software, and I have a call center and a management company that handles the day-to-day operations. And that's what has allowed me to get back more time and more freedom. That when I was in the single family grind of managing 9 people and the office and the systems and everything else, I didn't have that.
I was going to ask you the wins, but I just heard it. One of the big wins is it's you and some boots on the ground and software, right? You don't have this massive team that you're managing either.
That's it, man. I went from, I think at the peak, I want to say beginning of 2019, I think my overhead, which by the way, this number's relative. I know there's several that have 6 figures in overhead a month. And there's others. For me, it was 45 grand a month. And in South Florida, I had to wholesale 2 deals a month just to break even. I went from that to having very little monthly overhead in terms of having a storage portfolio. And so I think last year, prior to me selling the Jackson portfolio, I think it was a total of 838 units that I owned across 104,000 square feet. No employees, and that portfolio might take me an hour and a half, maybe 2 hours a week to run. And so I think you get leverage and scale that couldn't be more challenging with other asset classes.
I know your passion is coaching, but are you still on the lookout acquiring as well?
Absolutely. 100%. Yeah. I look for 1 or 2 good deals a year. Whereas when I was in single family, I would look for 50 to 100 deals a year. And so the cool thing is my bread and butter has been wholesaling. Every year, I typically wholesale 1 to 2 storage facilities. The fees in storage when you wholesale one of those is generally speaking a lot larger than in single family. And so, yeah, I look to do 2 to 3 deals a year. 1 or 2 of those are wholesale. And then I look to add one to add to the portfolio.
I know that when we have coaches on the pod that are still active in the business on a daily basis, but also actively looking to add to the portfolio and revenue, obviously, as well on the wholesaling side.
Yes, sir.
You obviously coach this. So give me the real estate investor that's a single family wholesaler like you were, that is looking to make this transition. When you bring them on as a student, what are some of the things that you're teaching them right out of the gates?
Yeah, look, right out of the gate, the first thing is, are you in this for cash flow or is it more long-term wealth building? And oftentimes the answer I get is, well, both. And I already know that's coming, but I always ask them, what is the priority? In other words, I have people that come into our community, Leon, that their business is very inconsistent. You know, it's the income roller coaster, and they're looking for cash flow as quickly as possible. And then I have others that have extra income from their business or from their job, and they don't necessarily need the cash flow today, but what they want to do is just make more money and build wealth long term. And I think getting a vision about what you want helps shape your buy box, the markets you go in, and the type of facilities that you look for. So I think the first thing I help people do is get clarity about what they want. Let's start with the end in mind versus building something from the ground up that doesn't really have that North Star I talked about earlier. Secondly, helping them find the markets that are undersupplied. I think that's really, really important, that when you're looking to buy storage, you're buying in a market that has more of a demand for storage than supply. You know, basic economics 101. And then leveraging their existing tools, resources, skill sets, and assets. So we help them craft a plan. Like I have people that came in from the community that were active, successful real estate investors, and they already understand direct mail and they understand how to market. Let's lean into that. Let me show you how to build the list organically, or we just give them the list these days. And then start with their marketing, because as you know, any business, I don't care if it's single family, storage, or anything else, we need to generate leads on a consistent basis. And what I have found, brother, is the conversation with these mom and pop owners, in my experience, is so much easier than dealing with a quote unquote motivated homeowner. Leon, this might surprise you, but 9 out of 10 times, what do you think, if I had to quiz you and say, hey, why do you think mom and pop storage owners sell their facilities? What would you guess? Maybe 1 or 2 guesses.
My first guess is, I think I let off the show with it, is that the family members don't want it. They're at an age of retirement.
Bingo.
And it's not necessarily that they don't need the money, and most of them are probably open to terms because they don't want a big hit on their taxes. That's what I would guess.
You nailed it. Retirement. They're getting ready to slow down. They don't have the bandwidth, the energy to want to treat it like a real business. Oftentimes they don't do any marketing. They don't have any automation, and they're just getting ready to retire and slow down. And these mom and pop owners, they're business owners. And so a conversation with them about creative financing and selling on terms, i.e. seller financing, is a lot more common. You don't have to do as much heavy lifting when it comes to educating them on that process. And they're very open to it because they've enjoyed the cash flow for all these years. But if you can structure the right terms, now they can enjoy that same stream of income without having to manage, own, and operate.
And the big tax hit, right?
Yes, that's right.
So they're basically getting the exact same type of cash flow without this massive lump sum and the tax implications that come with that.
It's huge. Yeah. Look, the facility in Amelia, I bought it with 90% seller financing. And that was the biggest driver for the seller, who, by the way, smart guy. He has a practice. He's an attorney in Cleveland, owned the facility with his sister. They weren't treating it like a business, but he didn't want that big tax hit from selling. And guess what? They owned it free and clear. So he knew it was going to be a sizable bill. So we just structured great terms. It worked out for him and it worked out for us.
My guess is, though, as a follow-up to that, is it's good conversation. But my guess is I've had a lot of conversations with people that have made, at least the transition into buying this asset class. They might not have completely left the single-family space or the apartments, but they're adding this as a strategy. So I know that it's got to be more competitive than it was 15 years ago.
Yeah.
How often are you running into these situations where you're talking to someone and you're the 5th or 6th person that they've talked to?
Yeah, look, there is no question that storage is more of a desired asset class today than it was 15 years ago. No question about it. And I don't know if this is because I just have an abundant mentality, but I think if I was going to give you some stats and figures, there's somewhere between 60 and 70,000 storage facilities in the United States. Well, around 64% of those are mom and pop facilities.
That's a big number.
Yeah, it's a big number. In other words, we're not looking for the public storage, extra space, like the beautiful 4-story buildings where you and I might want to rent storage. That's not the type of facility we're going after. So there's 64% of that 60 to 70,000 is mom and pop. So there's a lot of opportunity out there for people to get involved. And do we have to underwrite, i.e. analyze more deals than we did 3, 4, 5 years ago when I got started? Yes, 100%. I think anybody that tells you otherwise is probably lying or trying to sell you something. And with that said, there's still opportunity out there.
So this, I'm guessing, is a lot of the conversations that you're having on your new podcast. How was it making that transition?
Yeah, man.
I want to learn more about Storage Wins. I've listened and did all the things that you asked me to do and downloaded and listened.
Thank you, man.
And I'm always in, wanting to support you, but also knowing that I'm going to gain value from it. So you did hundreds and hundreds of episodes of the Flip Empire Show. And, that was your baby. I know that when you were in CG, that was something that was super important to you because you may have been the longest show running, in CG at that particular time. To make this, transition on the storage podcast as well. I mean, talk us through that.
Yeah, look, I feel like that was a platform, a door that got open for me. June 4th, 2016 was the first episode I recorded. And to this day, I've never missed a week where I didn't publish a podcast episode. And I did so because what's that quote? And I'm probably going to butcher it, but to whom much is given, much is required. And I've always felt, Leon, that we should be a funnel for valuable information. And so I was taught everything I know by someone and multiple people. And so it's my belief to share that knowledge and the experience, the mistakes, the lessons. And so June of 2016, I decided to launch this podcast. At the time, I called the Flip Empire Show. And you heard me say I got into storage in late 2020. Well, for 4 or 5 years, I was still sharing podcast episodes on the Flip Empire Show, but I just felt like the name of that podcast didn't align with what I was doing. It didn't tell anybody that I was into storage. Flip Empire really doesn't have anything to do with storage. And the mistake I made was that the show got very, very broad. I was having people on that could talk about land, and the next episode it could be co-living, and then the next episode it was me talking about something, and it was just scattered and all over the place. And I think, as with anything, you need to have focus and intention, and that first starts with clarity. And so I was thinking about, man, how do I turn this ship around? Because I knew I needed to not just rebrand, but I needed a new message. I needed to speak to a particular person that was interested in self-storage. And so it took a lot of time and energy to dial that in. But once I did, it was August of 25. So just a couple of months ago that I completely rebranded. Fortunately, I stayed on the same platform, so I didn't lose all that juice, for lack of a better word. But now, man, it's been a weight lifted off of me because I'm just very clear and intentional about who I'm meant to serve and who specifically I'm talking to. That with the Flip Empire Show, it was, again, just very, very broad.
I love it, man. There's very rare a human being that I meet in this community that says, I'm making millions in single family, but it's not serving me. I'm going to make this transition to what does serve me towards my North Star of my goals and what I want to accomplish, and then set out and do it. You made that transition on all things. The podcast, which was a long time podcast, rebranding that, rebranding yourself. And you could just tell there's this weight, especially from that last presentation that you did at the Collective Genius, that weight of, the single family and not serving you anymore. That weight's off of your shoulders. You're always happy, but you even look more happy today. Because you can tell you're living the lifestyle that you wanted to live, spending, I'm sure, more time with your beautiful family, traveling more. I know that's important to you as well, faith and getting more time for that. So I'm extremely proud of you and excited for what's next. If people want to, obviously the name of the show is Storage Wins. That's the podcast. If people want to follow you because they've loved everything that they've heard today, how do they go about doing that?
Yeah, thank you, Leon, man. It's brother, you know how I feel about you, man. It's always incredible to connect with you, and I appreciate you again allowing me to just kind of share with your audience and the platform, because I don't take this lightly. I know how much time and energy goes into hosting a podcast, and I know your heart, man, and the impact that you guys are having, not just with your members at CG, but now putting out this information on the podcast. So yeah, look, Storage Wins. If you guys want to plug into the podcast, storagewins.com. If you are interested in learning more about how you could either add storage to what you're currently doing, which, by the way, that's probably the path for most people. And don't feel like you need to shut down your existing business like I did. I'm just a nut. Don't feel like you need to do that. You can certainly add this asset class to your portfolio without it taking your eye off the ball. I think that's so important because of the similarities and the commonality, especially if you're a real estate investor. And then look, I'm on social media. We have a Facebook group for people that are interested in storage. It's called Storage Wins. You could just look it up. Or on Instagram, Alex Pardo 25 is my handle.
I know I told you this many years ago when you referred over Bobby, who you referenced earlier in this podcast. You know, great people know great people. And I remember when having a conversation with Bobby, I was like, man, you sound a lot like Alex. Just the heart, the type of human. But that said, Bobby was one of the biggest skeptics I've ever been on a call with about community like ours. And earlier I said, I don't care what community you get into, just make sure you're in a community surrounding yourself with winners, right? Show me a room with 20 winners and you're the next person in there, I'll show you 21 winners.
Yeah.
And I had that conversation with Bobby. I was like, you trust Alex, right? Alex just gave you, everything you need to know about this community. I know that you've never been in a room before, but trust me, if it doesn't make sense, you don't have to join. Come to the first meeting, check it out. I promise you, it'll blow your mind. And it'll be something different than you've ever done, because he had never been in any type of community like this. And I have seen that young man go from never marketing consistently to the last time my family was in Miami a few months ago, to the television, to the billboards, running South Florida from a marketing standpoint. And I know that he did all the work. But I was in the room when he learned about television and the power of television in this industry. And we owe, that's something that owe is a strong word, but I can tell you this, that introduction helped Bobby get to where he was going quicker. I know that because I saw it in the room. And I can tell you that if you had a conversation with him recently, he owes you a little bit of a referral fee or something.
Brother, well, do I have some time to just, there's so many things I want to share with you about that, and I'll be as concise as possible, Leon. When we had dinner, we were just conversing over a bottle of wine, and I actually brought that up. I said, Bobby, do you remember how skeptical you were about not CG, but just masterminds in general? Because I said, you remember? And he started laughing. And the 180 shift that Bobby has made from a mindset perspective, I think he would tell you, I can't put words in his mouth. I think he'd tell you life would probably be very different for him had he not made the decision to step out on a limb and join a community. I always say it's almost impossible to go to the beach and not get sand or water on you. And so what I mean by that is when you join the right community like CG, it's very difficult not to level up because you're surrounded by just high achievers and people that are going to walk alongside you. And yes, you'll find your people within every community, but I've always said this when I was in CG, I'll still say this today. It is the best masterminding community for real estate investors, hands down. I've always believed that. And I think it's not just because of the members and the quality and the caliber at which people operate, but it's the leadership team. It's Leon Barnes, it's Jason Medley, Mark DeLatour, Eric Brewer, right? Brian Snyder. Those are the people I know that are there that make up the fabric and DNA of the leadership team. And it's their heart, it's the culture. And so whether it's CG or another community that maybe aligns more with what you're looking for, find your tribe, right? Masterminds, communities, coaches, and mentors have completely changed my life. Look, as they say, you only know what you know. So don't feel like you have to embark on whatever journey you're on and whatever path you're on by yourself. You know how many times, Leon, to this day, in fact, I'll give you credit. When I bought my very first storage facility in Jackson, Mississippi, I don't know if you remember this, I didn't know a soul in Jackson. What did I do? I picked up the phone, I called Leon. Leon connected me with a CG member who lived in that area. He referred my attorney, who I still work with today, because I bought 2 facilities in Jackson, Mr. Monty Simpkins. I only got that referral because a CG member referred them to me, and Leon connected me with that CG. So my belief, and I'll shut up after this, it's the one thing. If you get one relationship, if you get one insight, if you get one mindset shift, just one thing, it's a multiple on whatever investment you make when you're in the right community.
You just reminded me I have to have Bobby on the show, because I've never seen a bigger transformation of how he carries himself today with such confidence, not ego, not over the top, just such confidence that he can solve people's problems in asset problems, specifically single family, South Florida and beyond, because I know he's beyond just South Florida now. I've never seen a bigger transformation of someone coming in as a skeptic to now being a true boss in a major metropolitan area. Alex, what you said about Jackson, Mississippi is so true. Like, I wouldn't know any investors in Jackson, Mississippi had it not been for the Collective Genius. I wouldn't. You could hit me with any primary, secondary, or tertiary market right now, and I could probably more than likely give you someone that's in our group that's in that area. And that's the power of community, because not only do you have that community when you're in the room, but you also have that community when you need something in that particular market, especially if you're buying things remotely. Alex, I can't thank you enough for your time, your friendship. This is a long time coming, and you did not disappoint, my friend. Please, everyone out there, go support Alex, my friend Alex Pardo here, in his new, not necessarily new, just rebranded podcast of Storage Wins. And obviously, if you want to get into or interested in getting into self-storage, I would recommend that you look into Alex, his coaching. He's just a genuine, really good human being. Again, thank you for your time today, Alex.
Thank you, Leon. God bless you guys. And man, thank you for everything. I really appreciate you.
Yes, right back at you. Likewise, my friend. And if you would like to be in the room with members like Alex and Bobby and all these other members that we talked about earlier, the best way to do that is check out our website at explorecg.com. There you'll find out all the information. You're a full-time real estate investor. We've got a tier more than likely for you, and we'd love to help you out. We'd love to be your tribe to help you get to that next level. That is going to do it for this week on the Collective Genius Podcast. We'll see you next week.
New episodes every week. To learn more, visit explorecg.com, where real estate investors come to scale.